Hi, welcome back to my channel and welcome back to part 2 of trim work. I'm Miriam Manzo. If you haven't watched part 1, I encourage you to watch that video first, as there's important information on baseboard, door trim, and crown molding, which are an uber important part of creating a beautiful end result when doing paneled walls. Today's video is brought to you by Squarespace, an all-in-one platform for helping to create a beautiful online presence and help run your business. Let's talk trim. First off, we have wainscoting. A lot of people have a misconception about what wainscoting is. Wainscoting is the lower portion of the walls done in a wood panel trim. And it's usually done again in a wood. In the old style, it would have been in a brown wood. And then to modernize it, a lot of people are doing in a painted finish. The way to create it is these days it's done with an MDF. So you are actually adding a top rail and stiles, and then you are adding a chair rail above that. And then typically what should be done is your inset panel would be done with a thinner MDF, and then a panel trim would go on top of the MDF and that thinner piece of MDF to create a panel trim detail. And then normally what I would do is, if I were doing a wainscoting, we would paint this out in a semi-gloss paint. Now, one of the reasons that wainscoting was introduced was obviously for decoration on the walls, but also this is a really good treatment to do on walls where you have a lot of traffic and a lot of bumping into the walls. It creates a buffer for the drywall, and because of the semi-gloss finish, it gives you a very durable finish to wipe down marks on that wall. However, wainscoting is really not current. It gives more of a dated look, so we rarely do a wainscoting, if ever. Now, having said that, you can see behind me, I do have a lower panel with a chair rail. The difference here is that I've also created an MDF panel detail on the upper portion, giving me a full paneled look. Now, here in my stair hall, the reason that I've done it is, A, it's a large space. This goes and spans 3 floors. It starts from the basement, it works its way up, and it is high traffic. So I've done this whole thing in this MDF paneling, painted in a semi-gloss finish, so that it gives durability as well as decor to the walls. Now, the difference between the way I've done it and the way you would normally see it is, you can see behind me the panels themselves, the inset portion is actually painted in my wall color, which is what's in the rest of my house. And this really softens the look of this full MDF paneling. Now, if we take a look at the hallways that bridge off of my center stair hall, I've changed up the way I've paneled and treated those walls. I've eliminated the chair rail portion. This is something that I like to do to create zones so that the rooms aren't closed off, but I want to differentiate between the main stair hall versus my hallways that run off of it. So I've taken the same MDF treatment, but I've done full panels for a little bit more of a contemporary look rather than the traditionalness of the stair hall. Now, I've still done the insets in that painted finish to create, again, a warmth as well as a continuity from my stair hall. How to decide whether to do an MDF paneling versus an applied molding? Keep in mind that MDF can only be done if you're starting from scratch. In other words, your baseboard, door trim, and crown molding have to sit on top of the MDF. So again, if you're coming into a home that is existing and these things are already done, you're going to want to either take everything off, or you're going to want to do an applied trim application. Also keep in mind that this is more of a traditional look. So if you are in a more contemporary home, or that's the look you're going for, this probably isn't the treatment that you want to go with. Let's talk about that chair rail height. Many people believe that the chair rail should be at 36 inches, regardless of their ceiling height. And others think that the taller the ceiling, the higher the chair rail should go. I actually believe in the absolute opposite. Regardless of my ceiling height, my chair rail height is always at 30 to 32 above finished floor. And again, that's regardless of my baseboard height. Now, why do I choose 30 to 32? The whole point of this for me is to increase the ceiling height. So by giving those upper panels a larger portion of the wall, it actually tricks the eye into thinking that the ceiling height is higher than it actually is. And the other thing you need to remember with an MDF application and keeping it to that 32 inches is, where are your electrical outlets? You don't want to have to cut into them, regardless if you're doing MDF or applied molding. So you have to think about where those outlets are. And if you're starting from scratch, I recommend taking the height of your baseboard, the height of your stiles, and then taking that number and elevating the height of your electrical outlets so that they end up in the middle of the panel. Or if you've got a high enough baseboard, lower your electrical outlets so that they are in the baseboard. The last thing that you want to do, and we'll talk about how to remedy this, is to have an electrical outlet or switch come right smack dab in the middle of where you want your panel trim to go. Let's take a moment to talk about Squarespace and why we here at MMI love using this platform to run our business. First up is their blogging and commenting feature. We use this for our monthly newsletter where we discuss topics from past videos. You can use this feature as it has a fully integrated commenting system that supports threaded comments, replies, and likes. Use their powerful blogging tools to categorize, share, and schedule your posts too. Mailing lists. Get the right message to the right people. Collect email addresses through your website and send subscribers the information they care about most with their unique mailing list feature. And finally, for online stores. Sell your products, whether physical or digital, Squarespace has the tools you need to start selling online. Click the link in my description and use code Miriam Manzo to get 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain. The application of panel trim for most of you is going to be an applied panel trim detail. So what this is it's a piece of trim that you buy that you're going to apply right to your drywall. Now, how do I select the size and style? For the style we discussed already, I'm going to look at the existing baseboards and trim in order to pick the style of profile. As for the size of that trim, I usually like to keep it closer to the 1 inch wide. The heavier the trim, the heavier the look is going to be. And obviously, if it's too thin, it's going to wind up looking too skimpy on the walls. And ideally, when doing a panel trim, you're going to be painting out this panel trim detail in the same color as the wall. I've seen lots of people do a wall color and then leave the trim painted white, which just gives you a very busy and sort of helter-skelter look and really isn't accomplishing the beauty of doing this panel detail. It is to add depth and dimension to your walls. We don't want to highlight it, which brings us to our next decision. Once we've decided on the panel trim size, what size do we make the boxes themselves, and how do we make that decision? So I'm going to preface this by saying that not all rooms are candidates for panel trim detail. If there is not a lot of symmetry in the room, if there are a lot of cutout openings that are some are higher than others, some are awkwardly placed, this isn't the best candidate of a room for panel trim detail. So when we are designing from the ground up, I'm obviously centering doorways, centering windows, creating balance. In a builder home or a home that you are getting possession of, oftentimes you're not going to have that symmetry, and this is going to take away from the panel detail. So I like to balance the size of my boxes with the size of the room. For example, if we have a wall that's 12 feet wide, I generally am not going to do two boxes of 6 feet each. I'm going to try to balance the size. So I would most likely do 3 feet or three boxes of 4 feet or four boxes of 3 feet. Now, again, the way that I make that decision is I look at the other walls. I'm trying to get a continuity of size to all the boxes across the room. So, for example, if I have a large window and I have 3 feet on either side of that window, then that 12-foot wall is going to have four boxes that are roughly the 3 feet. Now, here's my formula. You're going to take your baseboard, your crown molding, your trim. You're going to stay 4 inches away from any of those architectural features. And then if you're doing a box where you have an upper and lower, you're going to stay 4 inches apart from trim to trim. So basically what I'm trying to do is I'm giving you a continuity all around the boxes and in between so that the eye is not drawn to a bigger gap between any of the spaces. So again, I often see people who line up the top of their panel detail, for example, with a window and leave that space between the top of the panel to their ceiling or crown molding empty. You are also, if you are following curves in a window, you want to get a trim that has flexibility to it so that you can follow that curve of the window, again, staying 4 inches away. This is how I get those beautiful paneled rooms that are really creating, as I said, dimension and bringing some interest and beauty to the walls without the panels being the focal point of those walls. The other item I take into consideration is if there is going to be any furniture or artwork that we want to work around. For example, in a bedroom, I always dimension the bed. If the bed is 80-inch wide, my panel in the center is going to be 80-inch wide, and then I'm going to work out from there. Normally it would be one panel on either side. In a dining room, if I have a buffet or hutch, my center panel will be the size of that buffet or hutch, with the leftover being divided in between or on either side again. I will also do this with a couch. So this way, if you have a piece of art, it will fit comfortably in that center portion over top that main sofa focal point. Sometimes, however, I may choose to do 2 panels over a sofa, in which case I can still do one piece of art. It would just be hung with the center style in the center of it. Now, that is our spacing when we're going determining our sizes. Now, how do I make the decision whether to do a lower and upper panel versus a full panel? Or sometimes, how do I make the decision to do a chair rail between that lower and upper panel without resorting to an MDF or wainscoting type paneling? This is really, for me, dependent on the feeling in the room. I'm going to leave the link to these 3 bedrooms. You can see I treated the paneling on each wall of those rooms differently. In one of them, where the furniture is more traditional, we added a chair rail and then did a lower and upper, all in applied, all painted out the same color. In the second bedroom, we did a lower and upper because the furniture is a little bit more transitional, and we wanted to sort of give it a little bit of a twist. In the third bedroom, we went with a full panel detail. As a matter of fact, I only put one panel on each wall. This was to create a more contemporary vibe in the room, add a little bit of detail without it becoming a paneled wall situation. So really for me, I like to change it up in the rooms while keeping the continuity flowing by choosing the same trim style. Once I've chosen a trim for a room, I don't switch it up. I just switch up how I'm applying that panel detail to the wall. The other thing that I really want to emphasize is if you are going to do paneled walls, do not forget our fifth wall, the ceiling. Now, often I will again balance what I'm doing on the ceiling with what I've done on the walls. If I have done one large panel on the walls, I'm going to do the ceiling probably in 3 or 4 panels, or bring in another design detail, perhaps emphasize the roundness of the chandelier with a round medallion and then work around that. Or if my walls are busy, I'll probably only put one trim detail on the ceiling so that it doesn't look like the ceiling is left bare, but everything complements. We've talked about this before. In design, I like to create a yin and a yang. If I'm bringing in a traditional detail, I will balance that out with a more contemporary or streamlined detail so that it doesn't wind up getting heavy or too traditional or too modern, but rather gives you a beautiful blend of styles so that you're not pigeonholed into being one particular style. This gives longevity to your design, and as you can see behind me, this is now almost 15 years old from my original concept, and it is still a very beautiful and clean design detail that really defies dating. I hope that you enjoyed this video and found it helpful. Please don't forget to subscribe. It really helps to get our channel out there so that we can continue bringing you these informative videos. Like and comment, let us know how we're doing, and if you have any questions regarding this or any other subject, and then ring that bell icon to be notified of future videos. You know, panel molding is definitely something that you can do yourself if you're doing the applied molding variation. But if you're going to do anything more complicated like the MDF version behind me, I recommend that you bring in a carpenter and or a designer to help get the scale and proportions right. I'm Mary Manzo. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.